For ambitious dads caught between work and home, this is where you find your footing. Here's your host, Jeff Hittner.
Hello and welcome to the Ambitious Dads Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Hittner. After more than 200 conversations with fathers, I realized we're not talking enough, not about our fears, our ambitions, how our kids are really doing, or how we're holding up in the middle of all of it. This podcast is for the dads trying to build something meaningful and be present at home. The ones caring a lot, questioning if they're doing enough, and craving honest conversations without the filters. If that's you, you're not alone. You're in the right place. Let's figure this out together. So today, our guest is Richard Resnick. He is the CEO of the Pacific Institute, a consulting firm that helps individuals and organizations drive behavioral change. He has also built and run multiple MIT Media Lab startups and bioinformatics companies after getting his start in healthcare and genomics on the Human Genome Project. But most importantly, he's a dad to a 21-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son. So, Richard, welcome.
Gulp. Thank you. Is that really me? I thought I was just a regular guy.
You're all those things.
Thank
So tell us a little bit about your family story. So your kids are obviously a little bit older at this point. And, you know, you had, you and your wife divorced early on. So your relationship with your kids was impacted by that. And, half of Americans and more in Europe are divorced and separated. So this is as common as the people that we talk to that are in relationships with the mothers of their kids. So I want to kind of dive into some of the experience that you had.
Is that what we're going to? All right. Well, look, the first thing I'd say is I want to be deeply mindful and respectful of my former wife and her privacy, and also of my kids and their perception of their two parents.
Yeah.
So there's some things that I really would avoid talking about, but it's true to say that my former wife and I split up when the kids were very young. 3-year-old Madeline, 1-year-old Jonah. And that split was kind of violent, not physical, but emotionally. And truthfully, for the next 7 years, really, 8, my life was sort of a constant battle just to access my kids in some ways. And a lot of court proceedings, findings, appeals. Like, we spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on essentially like our rights as parents to access, influence, and parent the kids. And in those 7 or 8 years, we caused enormous emotional damage to those two beautiful little humans. Because, like, what you learn when you're a parent in that sort of a situation, you learn a lot of things. It's like, it's well documented and studied. The courts in the United States are not favorable to dads, so you're sort of starting in a bad spot there. But then you get into it, and you start to discover, just because the courts really surround themselves with this kind of information, you start to discover the harm that you're causing by fighting over anything. Even if it's just your 7 and your 5-year-old know that their mom and their dad can't actually like stand in the same driveway as we're moving from one car to another. Those are some of the most painful memories, because what you learn is that at that age, the child's identity is simply the summation of their judgments of their two parents. So in fighting like that, you're giving them an identity, and it's not one that they asked for, and it's not one that they deserve. So those first, till the kids were maybe 11 and 9 or so, as a dad, I got them like every other weekend and lived kind of 90 minutes away and did all the driving. So an enormous amount of my time with them, rare as it was sort of in the rearview mirror. Um, and they came with ideas about who I was and who my then partner and now forever wife was, that were harmful to them. And it caused, I mean, so much of those weekends was helping them to struggle through their fear of being my kid.
Mm.
And the way that you do that, of course, is you show up when you're allowed and you love them. You still need rules, but my God, it's like every single time you enforce a rule, you feel like you're just pushing them farther away. And honestly, I remember bringing them back on so many weekends on a Sunday, so tired, so exhausted by that eggshell dance of loving them for who they are and sort of trying without saying, just by doing, to show them that there's nothing but safety and love here. And then, kind of getting windows into their lives, like dropping them off. It was, I, I hate to admit it, but it was like a relief sometimes. It was so hard for me early on that I remember once, and I just hope my kids never watch this. I remember once when they were super little, counting the number of every other weekends there were until they were grown-ups. That's how hard it was for me. That's how much the challenge was. And in the midst of it, I'm running companies and all that other stress. So that was the first portion of their life. And then something happened, and still fighting in the courts. And we just found this great mediator who really looked it up and down. Usually these courts just don't have the time to deeply assess what's going on. So we always felt misunderstood. We found this one woman and she court ordered and she did the hard work. And she, at the end, she just kind of pulled us each aside and gave us some advice. And the advice that she gave me, because I was fighting just to preserve my access, to get a little more. Can I have more than a week in the summer, please? That sort of thing. And the advice that she gave to me was really profound and contradictory to my motivations. And here's what it was. It matters less how much time you have with the kids. It matters more that you and your former wife just stop fighting about anything and everything. And another way to say that is to get one extra night here at the cost of the violence between the two of you that drips into your kids. Is that really worth it? And to me, the answer was oh my God, it was just an enormous change of belief moment for me. And so I just stopped with the fighting. And yeah, I lost time, right? There were just, there was always a reason why you're not, no, this isn't going to work here. I had to miss a weekend for work and never got it rescheduled, whatever that was. And I just didn't fight about it anymore. My kids didn't see as much of me, but they still saw me plenty. And that's when it started to get better. That's when you could see that they started to thrive, that we were both fighting for justice as we saw it. And what we were actually doing was harm. So their teenage years were really different. And that's when I stopped counting the weekends, my friends. That's for sure. That's when they just get so interesting. They sort of hate you, that whole teenage game that goes on. But what ended up happening in their sort of early and mid-teens is that I became someone that they trusted intimately, because they would come to me with the really, really hard stuff that was going on in their lives, whether that was bullying or challenges with weight at younger ages, or it was trouble with substances or even the law at later ages. And what I did as a dad was made it safe, not free of consequences, but safe for them to talk to me about that. And so now I'm 1100 years old or whatever. And my daughter's graduating from a really, really great school up in New England. And my son is a sophomore here at Clemson, South Carolina, where I live now. And we're like a family, like my daughter calls me or FaceTimes me multiple times a week. She's got a radio program up there that I listen to, and we see each other. She comes down, and my boy and I talk regularly. I mean, he's kind of busy with the things that a cis male, muscly dude at Clemson would be busy with. But we all love each other, and it's really awesome. I never would have thought that the investment that I need to make was to fight less for access. That's a weird learning, to fight less for access, but really it's just to fight less. It's to fight less. And I think if there's one major lesson that I walk away with, it's, apart from like perseverance and staying in it, because man, were there times where I just wanted to run. It was so hard and painful and expensive and damaging. And I could see the damage I was caused. It's just, you end up with these crazy thoughts like they'd just be better off without me, which is so, so wrong. If anyone's ever in that situation, it's just not right. There's no way that that's right. Maybe you have to change, but you show up. You got to keep showing up. And look, we had rocky moments even after, like, it's family. These are kids. They're real humans. And the shit goes back and forth all the time. But super grateful for the chance to talk through that, Jeff. Thank you. And I don't do it very much anymore because it's painful. It's a lot. There was a lot of pain back there, but one of the things that we talk about at the Pacific Institute is to go through your past pains, your past failures, if you will, so that you can admire how well you recovered. And that's how I feel right now.
Well, thank you for being so like vulnerable and profound. I have so many questions, but I think my most important one is around your mindset, because it's like getting that advice it was two pieces of advice in one, right? It was like fight less and see your kids less, right? Which takes just the utmost humbleness to put your kids first, in so many different ways. What was like, that wasn't, I imagine, an overnight decision process for you. So how did you kind of get there from the moment she said that to the moment where you were like, I think I'm ready to do this? Because there's so many different ways that we could have framed that, right? You could have framed it as, and I know it's very obvious, the negative ways, like she wins, or I don't get to see my kids, right? As opposed to what obviously you needed to frame it as, which is, I am going to put my kids first and hope that this is in the long term, the best thing for us, which it obviously has been. But how did you get there? How did you get to that mindset shift?
Yeah. So weirdly, like the moment that this woman explained that to me, I got there. It was immediate. I was like, oh my gosh, of course that's right. A. B, you mean I don't have to fight so much? Amazing. Yeah. The challenge for me was, and this took, years really, the people around me who had supported me through all that fighting felt like and communicated to me that I had given up.
Yeah.
They were like, you lost, man. You lost this thing, and there's no justice. And I'm like, there is justice for these two little children. There is justice, and here it is. And so it was hard, the people closest to me. And ultimately, what happens with those people that are your spouse, your closest human friends, your family, is they see that you're committed to this path that they don't actually really support. So they they start supporting you, but then they sort of just roll their eyes in the back a little bit. And I could sense that some of that was going on too, but the kids just thrived after that. I mean, so, and now, like, because of that, we can be in the same driveway, passing the kids back and forth. We can go to the same graduations, right? Like we collaborate on things. It's not perfect. It never will be. But like, so I think the mindset shift for me was easy, and it was hard for the people who loved me.
Beautifully said. What's keeping you up as a dad now with your kids, being towards the end of their teenage and college years?
Does your viewership really want to know what it's like over here? You asked me what's keeping. I mean, mostly when I think about my kids, I just have like the thing that comes first is I'm so proud. I'm like, I can't believe it. They got this far. We love each other. We have this relationship. I'm super excited to see what they do with their lives. They're both really good humans. They're very different. What keeps me up is like when I graduated from college in 1994, there was like sort of a pretty clear playbook for how to start, you know? So you apply for jobs, you get a job, and you work your way up. And there's just so much uncertainty about that playbook now, about even the value of the college degrees, that very expensive college degrees that they're getting, that I have just concerns that like the promise that we had growing up doesn't exist for them, and it's so much more difficult for them. So what we worry about at this age, if you got kids at this age, well, then that means they went through high school during COVID and they grew up on a phone. So we worry about like their their ability to get a job, their ability to find peace and contentment and meaning that lasts for more than 6 seconds. Their ability to have healthy relationships and not make the kinds of like life-changing, altering mistakes that people in their early 20s can make. You worry, are they going to launch? Like, because they're both still at school. Like, what happens to my sweet 21-year-old daughter in August? School's over, So you just kind of worry about them at that level. Like, and then you start to, and I have no answers here, just questions. Like, what is my role? Is another huge question. What is my role now? And I can model my role based on my dad. And he was pretty good at a whole bunch of things and not so good at others. So, you get that. But like, you want to make sure that your kids aren't living in your basement when they're 30. That's a big worry. And it's a more and more common thing because the kind of promise of the American middle class is a little broken right now and it's super hard for them to get started. So do you help them to get started? Like, is there a down payment on a house that like, is that even right to do? You have all these questions about, and of course, then like in the world of helicopter parenting, of course, you're going to help them all you want, but I'm not sure if that's so you just know, like, you can't really use the playbook that you were raised with because the world's changed so much. And like, I know that there's going to be hardship, that they're going to struggle to find work sometimes, that they're going to not be able to afford a new car. And the one that I bought them when they were sophomores in high school just like grinds to a halt. Like, it's not clear. I mean, it'll always be there for them to pick up the FaceTime or the phone, and they know that, but it's not clear like how to help them get a fair start and not overindulge them either.
These are all big questions that I hear from lots of dads. So I appreciate you articulating it so well. I think another one that came up while you were speaking those, going back to the story overall, is what I hear dads struggling with if it's not about like the future and their teenagers and living in the basement and all those big questions. It's we hold on as men in particular really tight to this idea that we're going to be perfect in how we raise our kids, that our kids are perfectly imperfect. But when you know that you're going through the scenario, for instance, that you went through with your ex-wife and raising them, and know that it was creating like scars, how do you like manage your own ego as a dad, and sort of, trying to be a great dad without holding having all of this shame or guilt pushing you down out of that, because there was only so much that was in your control and so much that wasn't. Like, can you talk a little bit about that? Because there must have been a lot going through your head in terms of the father that you were. And yours is, in some respects, an extreme example, because we have dads that I talk to all the time that are talking about like feeling that they are doing a really horrible job, and it's just on the normal day-to-day parenting. And then here you are, in a very different situation.
Yeah, I hate that question because it makes me go back there. First, I just want to, you mentioned my ex-wife, and I just like to use the word former wife because I think it more appropriately honors the fact that we were in love, we got married, we had 2 children. So I just wanted to say that. There, Jeff, there were so many therapy sessions where all I could do was say, this is not the way I wanted to be a dad. This is not it. Um, and sure, I could let myself get really sad about that sometimes, but they were also like not always accessible to me, not always with me. Sometimes it was quite difficult to access them on the phone. And so there were also like these weird stretches of I'm a 30 something or a 40 something, just like empty nester almost. There were these long stretches of, okay, I guess I'll join the co-ed hockey hockey league for like there was sort of almost like a compartmentalization that compartment opened up every time I had access to them and every time I had to fight for more access to them. And whenever it opened up, um, honestly, I here's the way I dealt with it. I didn't feel like I was a bad dad. I felt like I was doing everything that I could. Excuse me. Thank you. I felt like I was doing everything that I could to be there for them with all these constraints and fighting an uphill battle against my former wife, against a system that more often than not sided with her, against an enormous set of bills. Like, there were a lot of people and systems trying to prove the point that I was not good for them. And I knew I was, right? And so that was actually kind of motivating.
Mm.
So the mindset that I had was I am fighting for fairness, for the children to have access to their father, which I know is important. A father who speaks nothing but kind words about their mother and that whole side of their family. A father who is imperfect, who doesn't get to show up for a lot of the games and stuff because I live far away, who, definitely non-traditional, but I felt like I was sort of fighting like a righteous fight. And so it was super hard. And I had a ton of support from my wife and a ton of support from my therapy and coaching and family and friends. But what else was I going to do? Like, I'm never going to just walk away and leave him. Because if, Jeff, there were times where I thought that would be easier. I think I said this once already. but I don't think I would have survived. I don't think I would have allowed myself to live if I had like I can't walk around the world knowing that there's two beautiful little kids that are mine that I chose to bring into the world with my wife, then wife, you know, and I've chosen to abandon them. There's no way I could have lived with that. So there was only one choice. And for me, it became a choice of righteousness, not justice, but righteousness, doing the right thing by them.
I love it. I love how you frame it because so much of fatherhood is about our belief system, right? And um, where we choose to start that conversation in our own head, and also how we choose to imagine the impact that we can have on our kids, whether we only get to see them every other week or we get to see them every day.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important for so many of us as dads to really internalize.
One thing
Um,
though I want to say about your viewership is that, later on when the kids were sort of mid and late teenagers, my wife and I moved pretty close to them. So we were close enough that there was way more interaction and they were starting to drive and all that other stuff.
Mhm.
At that time, I was also running the most complex company that I've ever run, a large, quickly growing healthcare company. And I was so busy. This is the kind of company where you're like 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. There's always a challenge. It's hyper growth, all that stuff. And in fact, you coach me and many people there. So you know it well. And you know what? Huge mistake I made is even then living that close because of history, because of my judgment of the importance of the job, I missed a lot of after school games.
Mm.
And my younger one let me have it in his senior year. He let me have it. He told me everything, and he kind of decided to just go dark on me for a couple months. We didn't get to talk. He wouldn't answer any of my. He just like, you blew it. You blew it. This was like 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago. And so, look, on the one hand, you know, he's a dumb kid who doesn't know that he's going to need his dad around. On another hand, he's a dumb dad who didn't see that come in and wasn't there. So what do you do in a situation like that? You show up, dudes. You show up. You just don't give up. You show up. You keep going. You keep asking. And like we're back now, we're back. So it's not like I don't want I'm really thinking about my kids watching this and like we all like walk around with this, like, what will they think of me as a father? And I think if I could answer that question for them, they would say he kinda sucks, except that he's really there when you need him.
Mm.
They would say he wasn't there a whole bunch during our childhood, but he kept on showing. And they don't know about all that darkness, all that stuff that I had to fight for. And I'm glad that they don't. But like parenthood is just a freaking marathon, man. It never ends. And you're going to screw up over and over and over again. Now I'm running this consulting company and it just gives me more time. By the way, like running companies without venture investors is I just like to advertise that's a great thing. And so now like there is more time. And so for longer weekends, we live farther away. They're busy now too, but there's just more time and space. And the ambitious dads thing makes me sort of pose the question to your listenership of like, you know, getting your priorities straight around your ambitions, your professional ambitions and your personal ambitions, because I didn't back then.
You know, it's go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, please.
Um, well, I mean, it's interesting because one of the topics that comes up often is like the new definition of what it means to be the provider. And I know you had a
Mm,
large financial responsibility, even when you saw your kids very, very infrequently.
right.
And so, you know, that feels, and again, maybe it's just a fatherhood sort of like tug of war, right? Where you were working at your job so that you could pay the child support that you needed to pay. and your son, wanted to see you. So you're sort of damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And is, when you're processing that, kind of how do you process the impossible middle there?
Very insightful question. And my gosh, do I remember that feeling? Like, okay, I could spend more time with you if I chose to make less money, but I can't because I owe all these bills for you. And of course, please never say that to your children. Never say that to your children. But like, I don't really know how I navigated that. I think probably pretty poorly. I think the belief that or the story that I told myself was, if you screw up on the financial commitments, then you lose everything that you get with them right now. So you have to kind of prioritize that, even though it means that you're going to miss some of these important things, right? And B, still recovering, particularly in the earlier years, still recovering from the scars of their childhood and what that left on me. And now sometimes it was just really difficult. Like the compartment of these are my two beautiful humans is closed Monday through Friday of this week, except for a phone call or something like that. And when it opens up, it's joy, but it's also suffering. It's the suffering of all the limitations and sort of how that's impacting them and trying to deal with all that. That having to choose between making sure that I earn the money and being there for that game, like it was maybe deeply psychologically easier for me to choose the money because of all that pain. Like literally, that is maybe as vulnerable as I can imagine getting. I'm not even sure if it's true, but I think it is. And I have never said that out loud before. I've never really discovered that about me before, but that feels like that could be a part of that truth. I never wanted to be a deadbeat, ever, ever, ever. That was so important to me to provide financially for them. And I think you're right, though. It's like you go so far and yeah. Gets to parental regret. Do you talk about that at all on this pod?
Well, tell us what that means to you.
Your audience should be able to tell themselves what that means to me. Like, I wanted to be in a loving relationship and raise kids who saw this really great unit of a mom and a dad. And, you can't help but to harm your kids inadvertently. No one wants to, but you do anyway. But like the way that we did it was so just bad. And so you just have all these regrets. One thing you never really regret, though, is having them. It's more just like it could have been something really different, and there's no going back. There's no changing that. So you can walk around with that sadness, that regret. But if it helps you to do something positive, if it helps you to try to get better, if it helps you to send a text, like you got 30 seconds, you could look at some stupid Instagram reel or send a text to your kids that says that you love them, then maybe that regret is a fuel as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Is there anything else that I should have asked you about? I feel like you've shared a lot.
Can we stop? This has been very, very, it's been really great to go through all this with you, but it has been something over the past couple of years while there are grown-ups in college, have compartmentalized a little bit. So bringing it back out, it just brings it all back out. But I'd be delighted to talk to you more about it anytime.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable. Again, I think this is actually so helpful for so many dads and so many parents in general, and perhaps their kids. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
With pleasure. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ambitious Dads podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation and want more insights on balancing ambition and fatherhood, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upcoming episode. Check out the links in the description for our newsletter and more resources to help you live intentionally as a dad. See you in the next episode.